Hello everyone, welcome. Today I'll be sharing 10 fragrance brands I do not buy from and why. These are fragrances that you will likely not see in my collection. I'm not saying you will never see them because never say never, but they're definitely fragrance brands that I tend to avoid. I don't necessarily want to spend my money on them. I don't consider them a fragrance purchase that I would like to be making, and I feel like this kind of video would be really helpful to kind of de-influence some of you when it comes to fragrances in a way that's not necessarily me being like, okay, this fragrance is horrible, you don't need it. But I do think when it comes to any fragrance purchase, I tend to be very methodical. I always try to really consider, do I like this fragrance brand? Do I like this perfume? Are these notes that speak to me? Do I like the way this brand prices their fragrances? Do I like the aesthetic? Do I like this brand enough to actually put my hard-earned money into their pocket in exchange for these fragrances? Would I be happy if I did that? These are all things that I consider because at the end of the day, fragrances are a luxury. This is a luxurious purchase to be making, and I don't like to do anything without intention. I don't like to do anything, especially buy things that I am not comfortable with, that I don't like. And I feel like this will be a fun video to film. So let's get into it. But if this is your first time watching this channel, hello, my name is Anya. I absolutely love fragrances. I talk about them here 5 times a week, Monday through Friday. I also post additional content on TikTok and Instagram under the username ANECHKAFRAGRANCES. And if you're interested in fragrance history, I actually do run a podcast called The Fragrance Report. This podcast comes out with a new episode every Wednesday on Spotify and on YouTube. And the focus of this podcast is to just talk about fragrance history, but I also like to inject my fragrance favorites of the week in this podcast as well. So if you're ever curious about what I'm wearing on a regular basis, check out the podcast because I take you through my favorites week after week. And also, if you are someone who is trying to be more considerate about spending money on fragrances, if you are trying to be more methodical about your purchasing, then I would definitely recommend checking out my fragrance collection and expense tracker. This is a handy spreadsheet that allows you to put in all your fragrance purchases or existing fragrances in your collection line by line, and it also allows you to put in the notes, accords, and your general preferences regarding these fragrances, and it allows you to effectively track how much you're spending every single month on fragrances. So if you're interested, the spreadsheet is down below for you to download. Anyway, I think it goes without saying that these are just my opinions. If you love any of these brands, that is totally your prerogative. I'm not forcing you to not purchase from these brands. These are just brands that you will likely maybe not see in my collection. And there is one exception to this, and I will get to that in a moment, because I have one fragrance from one of these brands, but just this one fragrance and no other fragrances, and I will get to that. But for the majority of this video, these are fragrances that I just do not have. Anyway, let's get into it. Anyway, the first brand is probably the one that I think a lot of people like to hate on, but I haven't bought anything from this brand with the exception of one decant for the entirety of this brand's history on the internet, and that is House of Seage. Now, House of Seage has recently come under fire lately for the owner's political leanings, and in my opinion, that's neither here nor there. Like, I think everyone has the right to put their money where they want to, and if they have fragrances that they bought but now they just want to chuck them out or throw them away, they have a right to do that. But I think that for a while people were being like super performative with it. People were like literally taking these fragrances and throwing them in the garbage. I don't know if I agree with that personally. In fact, people can make all the statements they want to make online. That is their prerogative, but I feel like there are other ways of getting rid of fragrances, maybe giving them away rather than just like putting them in a dumpster. I think that that's just wasteful, like it or leave it. But I think that when it comes to House of Seage in general, the reason I've never bought anything from the brand is because I never thought their fragrances were wow. I liked their fragrances, but I was never really someone who wanted to like kind of play the game of waiting for one of their fragrances to go on sale to buy the fragrance. I never really wanted to spend full price on them, but yes, like they are kind of affordable if you look at the sale pricing. Like then you can get a fragrance for as low as $144, which for a niche brand is pretty good. but I never really like I found that kind of like waiting around for that was just a little bit too taxing for me. Like I just didn't really want to do it. And when I could smell like the only opportunity I had to actually smell the fragrances was whenever I'd go to Saks Fifth Avenue in New York. And I don't live in New York, but I would try the fragrances when I went there, and I liked them for what they were. I thought they were good, like versatile fragrances. I thought that they were nice, but I didn't get wowed by them. I really like the bottle design though. The bottle design is absolutely exquisite. It's French glass, no seams on the glass, and the top is covered in Swarovski crystals. Is it like a bottle design that I absolutely love? No, but I like it because they have very wisely made that their signature. Like you see that bottle design and you know it's House of Seage, and I think that's really smart. The thing that really made me kind of like iffy when it came to the brand in general was, this is like tea. Not really. I don't know, this is just what I do. Sometimes I go like on a bit of an Indeed search, an Indeed hunt, if you will, and I like to look at like certain brands on Indeed and just see what their employees say about them. The one for House of Siage is really bad. Like, what their employees say about the company is bad, and for that reason, like that was the reason that kind of made me be like, I don't know if I want to bend over backwards to find these fragrances when they're on sale, when I don't even like or love the perfumes enough to buy them to begin with, because I have other alternatives that I like I have other, everyday friendly fragrances that I could wear instead. And I just, the reviews are really bad. And as someone who is trying to move up in my 9 to 5, I'm someone who really values a positive work experience. I saw that and I'm like, I don't really know if I want to spend my money on a brand like that. And that's why I think it's important to really like do your research when it comes to spending money on any brand. Don't like just fall for the hype and throw your money at something and then be surprised when that person isn't who you thought they were. I think in this day and age, no matter what your political leanings are, no matter what you think is right or wrong, it's always helpful to do your research. So whenever I see a bunch of like people be like, oh my gosh, I bought like 5 fragrances from this brand, but now like they came out as this, and I'm like so enraged, I'm just gonna chuck them in the trash. I'm like, so you didn't look them up beforehand? You didn't like kind of like do your own digging on the brand before you spent thousands of dollars on their fragrances? Like that to me is just like weird. I don't know. Am I the only one that does this? I have no idea, but that's my verdict on that. And it's also funny, by the way, it's kind of funny because I've talked about House of Siage on TikTok because for a while I was actually like doing a lot of, TikTok content. So I talk about new fragrance releases, and I always like to talk about House of Siage because their bottle designs are like super interesting and their concepts are really interesting. So I would just talk about them because they're interesting to talk about. Ever since the House of Siage kind of thing went down, people have been going back on those old videos and being like, how dare you talk about them, this and that. And I'm like, first of all, calm down. Second of all, look at when this video was published. Back then, you were bending over backwards talking about how much you love this brand, and now that the trend is different, you're going to literally vilify anyone that talks about them objectively. Like, what? Like, we all have a right to have our preferences when it comes to buying different brands, but let's not vilify the people that choose to love a brand and choose to spend their money on a brand. Like, we all have a right to our opinion. If our opinion is different, that's fine. Okay? We don't have to agree on 100% everyone's opinion. Like, it's fine. Like, let's dial back. So anyway, one brand that I definitely do not buy anything from, and I don't think I will ever really buy anything from them, and they happen to be a super popular brand, is Tom Ford. I think I've spoken about this before, but I find Tom Ford to be not the greatest investment when it comes to fragrance, when it comes to like what kind of money I want to be spending on fragrance, because not only are they super expensive, even for a designer brand, but the experience also, like when I look at the bottle, when I feel the bottle, when I kind of interact with the fragrance, is not something that I would be like, wow, this is like totally worth it for me, because their fragrances, in my opinion, are too expensive to have like kind of like a bad quality bottle experience. And that's the thing, as consumers, we have a right to say that, oh yeah, I just don't like the aesthetics of this brand. I just don't like the way this brand does their packaging, so I'm just not going to buy from them. And for me, I'm like that with Tom Ford. I can respect Tom Ford for breaking a lot of barriers when it comes to their fragrances, for really pushing the envelope and becoming super iconic. I can respect them for that. And I can also get decants. I have decants of some of their fragrances, but I'm not going to, hand over the cash to get a bottle of Lost Cherry, Bitter Peach, effing fabulous, because I'm just not into those fragrance looks. Like, I'm not into the design, I'm not into the general fragrance itself, because if I'm buying a fragrance, I want to love the fragrance and the bottle itself, because that's what I'm spending my money on. So Tom Ford for me is a no, because regardless of how good their fragrances are, in my opinion, they're terribly overpriced, and I don't love the experience that I get with the bottle design. And I've gone into Sephora enough times to actually try a few Tom Ford fragrances, and it's never been hitting it out of the park for me at all. The next fragrance brand I want to talk about is Bond Number 9. For me, Bond Number 9 is too expensive to look that cheap. And that is my opinion. I'm not going to spend money on a fragrance brand that makes a point to create fragrances that look that cheap. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't need it. I know they're super popular. I'm just not a fan. So they're a definite pass for me, for sure. I get that's a signature, but I am not the target audience. I am not the target demographic. That is going to be a pass. So I filmed a video kind of ranking designer fragrances, and it was one of those filters where you kind of choose, okay, I want to slot this fragrance in this spot. Okay, next fragrance. I want to slot this fragrance in that spot. Next fragrance. And by happenstance, I ended up putting Dolce Gabbana at the top, and I want to explain why, because Dolce Gabbana, they're one of the fragrance brands I like one perfume from, and that's it. And that one perfume is L'Imperatrice. I will ride or die for L'Imperatrice. This is one of my signature scents. I love it so much. This fragrance is nostalgic for me. This fragrance is a fragrance that I have a backup of. I love this perfume. I adore it so much. I got it secondhand, actually. Oh, wait, no, I got it at a discounter. Yeah, that's where I get mine. The reason I'm not going to buy anything more from Dolce & Gabbana is because genuinely, they're just not a brand that I like to buy from, because their ethics are kind of odd, their owners are not necessarily the nicest, and their fragrances are not to my taste. I find that their fragrances have never wowed me as much as the L'Imperatrice has. So that's just a personal preference. I never get super excited when I see a new release from them. I'm just blah about it. The next brand is Byredo, and I know a lot of people love Byredo. I remember going to the Byredo store in Paris and smelling all the fragrances. I don't think there was one fragrance in that store that I was wow, this is something I definitely want to wear more of. This is definitely something that I want. And I think it's because the fragrances themselves, their brand DNA, or the accords that they use throughout their fragrances are just not to my taste. So it's not that they're bad, it's just I don't prefer the line in general. Another brand that I've kind of gone in between, I've considered getting something from this brand, but other times I'm kind of I'm not quite sure. Le Monde Gourmand, I know they're super popular. I know that everyone seems to love them on social media. And I know that they do tend to release some beautiful, affordable gourmand perfumes, but they do not last on me. I remember buying a few fragrances from them. I sprayed them on, they were gone within probably an hour. It was insane how quickly these fragrances left my body. They were so fleeting, I just did not want to wear them ever again. And I know they're super popular, I know people love them, but they're just they've never been a fragrance brand that I've been so wow about. And maybe it's because this might be a hot take, but with some brands, I'm kind of if I see a brand that's super, super inexpensive, I kind of get a little bit wary of it, because I'm at that point in my fragrance collecting where I'm okay with spending a little bit more money on something that will be wow, rather than spending less money on fragrances that are going to be and think it's because I've had a lot of opportunity to smell like hundreds, thousands of fragrances, so I can kind of like know what I like and what I dislike. But there are a lot of fragrances out there that I call affordable niche. So I'd rather buy something for like $90 or $100 than to buy 5 of a fragrance that's like $20. And Le Monde Gourmand, I just don't like how they just are so fleeting. And they do have a few collaborations. There's one in particular that has like the note of ink there, I think. Like, I'm just like thinking about this off the top of my head. I can't remember who this collaboration was with or the name of the fragrance, but that I would be really interested in sampling. But in general, their releases are not something that I'm like, wow, like this is amazing, I want to try it so much, because my experience with the brand's longevity has not been great. And I don't, like, don't tell me, here's my pet peeve, I don't like it when fragrance reviewers are like, oh yeah, just overspray the fragrance and it'll be fine. First of all, if someone's buying a fragrance, they don't need to be told, oh yeah, just overspray that fragrance and it'll be fine. Like, you don't have to be dunking yourself in 3 milliliters, 5 milliliters worth of fragrance just to enjoy it. At that point, just buy a different fragrance, because that is an insane cost per wear. And I'm not saying that we are all going to use up every single drop of fragrance that we have in our collection, but the convenience of having just like 3 or 5 sprays of a fragrance and having a full day of wear, or at least several hours of wear, is something that I do not want to compromise. So that's why when I've tried a few fragrances from a brand and the longevity is subpar at best, I'm gonna move on. That's just my opinion. Another brand that you won't really find in my collection is Versace. I like what they do with their Eros line, particularly, Eros Energy, that yellow one. I really like that for guys. I think that's a beautiful fragrance. It's one of my favorite designer fragrances for men, actually. I really enjoy that one. The feminine fragrances, I'm not too big a fan of. The Bright Crystal line, never really liked them. Crystal Noir, not my thing. They just don't click for me. Like, so that's why, again, a pass. I really wanted to like Crystal Noir, does not last on me at all. So, pass. So another brand that a lot of you might find controversial that I'm including this in the video, and this is a brand that I'm kind of like open with. Like, I am open to trying their fragrances, but I'm probably not, like, I don't have any of their fragrances. And I can't think of a fragrance that I'm gonna like buy from them in the near future at all. And that is Armani. I have not really clicked with any of the Armani fragrances. What I do like from them is the My Way line, but I have some alternatives in my collection. I'm specifically thinking of some Middle Eastern brands that do florals in kind of like a similar way, that I've just not been like super, like, I've never really been super pressed to buy Armani fragrances. I know that Facade is kind of like maybe distant cousins, like super distant cousins with My Way. I know that Armani Code is a really good fragrance, but on me it never really lasted as long as I wanted it to. So I think I gave it to my sister. Yeah, she loves it. Again, it's a fragrance house that I can appreciate for what it is, but me personally, I haven't bought anything from them, and I don't know if I will unless they come out with something that I'm like, wow, you know? And I know when it comes to designer fragrance houses, I'm so incredibly picky. And I will say this, like, there's some other really affordably priced, beautiful niche fragrances that are a touch more unique, a touch more interesting. A lot of those fragrance brands are fragrance brands that I happily work with. And I work with them specifically because I'm super, interested in the fact that they're coming out with what I consider to be affordable niche pricing, which is pricing that's accessible to anyone who's interested in buying designer. But these fragrances are a little bit more interesting. There's some nuance to them. They're rather special. They're not going to be the fragrances that you see everywhere else. So when it comes to like kind of what I want to spend my money on, I go for that. What else? Oh yeah, another fragrance brand I'm not interested in, Ariana Grande. And I understand the Ariana Grande Cloud, super iconic. What else from them is iconic? They have so many cloud flankers. REM. Yeah, there are so many fragrances from Ariana Grande that are available that I will likely never buy because not interested. Like, I remember, okay, I worked in a beauty store that sells Ariana Grande fragrances for a really long time. I remember around the holidays, the amount of Ariana Grande cloud fragrances that we would stock and how quickly they sold out. It was insane. It was insane. Like, we would build a little pyramid of Ariana Grande fragrances and it would be gone by the end of the day. That's how many people are buying Ariana Grande fragrances. And if a fragrance is consumed by so many people, I don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need to give any, like, I don't need to give you any kind of like a new opinion on it. I get why people like it. I understand. I remember buying a travel spray and I tried it and it was gone within like about like 30 minutes. And I was like, what is this? I'm taking it back. I'm taking it back. I returned it so quickly. Yeah, there are a few designer fragrances that I have returned because I'm like, I'm not going to have you in my collection. Like, I don't, no, absolutely not. Another brand that I don't really like is Gucci. And I just don't love the way they do their florals. Like, that's the long and short of it. There's one fragrance from them that I like. I think it's Gucci Guilty Absolute. I really like that fragrance. I think it does, blackberry and rose quite beautifully. I've never really bought it, but I remember really enjoying it when I was working in retail. I'd spray the tester. It's a thing that every associate does. But I just never really loved the way they did the majority of their florals. And that's the thing. Different brands will interpret notes in different ways. So sometimes you'll find a brand and you really love the way they execute their fragrances. Other times, not so much. So Gucci for me is one of those brands that I'm just like, not too interested in it. Oh yeah, another brand that I'm not too keen on, and this might change, is Chloe. I've tried their fragrances. They smell a little bit too perfumey for me. If you know, you know. They just smell like a perfume catalog. They smell like a perfume tester in one of those like 17 magazines. If you grew up in the 2000s, you remember flipping through those magazines. I would be so obsessed with those, with like ripping out like the fragrance samples or the fragrance strips from them. And Chloe is giving a perfume sample in a magazine, and I can appreciate the nostalgia of that, but I am not going to buy it in 2025. So yeah, I'm going to stop talking now because I do have to run, but that's it for this video. Let me know, do you agree? Do you disagree with these opinions? Like I said, these are my opinions. I think everyone has a right to their own opinion, including me, as a consumer, as a content creator. And I'm not trying to tell you that any of these brands don't deserve your money, but I just think that it's good to talk about what we like and also what we don't like when it comes to fragrances. Not everything is going to be something that we are jumping up to buy, and that's totally fine. We all have a right to our opinion. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Bye.